So I'm going to try to just, keep it on a high level and not be tempted to over-explain any particular area, because you're going to see that there's certain things that I have to hit within the next 50 minutes here. So there I am. You can see me in two places. That was a really nice pronunciation of my name, Jess. Some of the Uskaritises in America pronounce it Uskaritis. The Lithuanians and Russians pronounce it Ushkaritis, and I'm trying to get my ear wrapped around that. I'm a technical training specialist 3. I've been with Vertex a little over 12 years now. And I specialize in the indirect tax products, all of the indirect tax products. But today we're going to talk about O Series. So our objectives: upon the completion of this session, you will be able to add taxability drivers for products and product classes. Specifically those two things, but what we're going to see is a taxability driver is just an input field, and there's a lot of different things that I could use these input fields for, and we're going to explore some of that, and I'm going to explain that to you. We're going to perform taxability analysis on the taxability categories. The driver itself is not capable of doing anything until it's mapped to a category. Within the category are the jurisdictions, and the jurisdictions contain the rates and rules. Now, there may be no rule if there's no taxes, or usually there's an automatic rule, and there may be conditional rules. So this is the automatic rule for taxing that particular item, except in this particular situation, you may choose to use the conditional rule. So I've picked some situations where we could look at different conditional rules. So we'll also look at the process once we've looked at categories and we've analyzed them, of actually mapping the driver to the category. So what are we going to cover in our agenda? Right now we're in the introduction. I'm going to talk to you about taxability drivers. We're going to look at categories, explore them, and then we're going to analyze those categories. You cannot analyze a category until you set up a company. You have to have at least one company set up. And I have a company set up that I'll talk to you about in a little while. And that kind of justified the creation of certain drivers and mapping to certain categories. Mapping the drivers to the categories. And then hopefully, if I time this right, I've created a little test that we could do at the end where we could look at the pre-test and then we could look at the results of the test. So what's a taxability driver? A taxability driver is simply an input field that's going to represent something that's going to come from the ERP into O Series. Now, in O Series, you would expand My Enterprise, and under My Enterprise, you would see taxability driver management. So this has changed a little bit in version 9 when we changed the user interface experience. So underneath taxability driver management, you would see taxability driver. Now, here's some examples on the supply side. I could have one product. For instance, I sell pipe. So I could just say maybe for some reason copper pipe is taxed differently than all of the other pipes that I sell. Or maybe all of the piping that I sell is taxed the same way. So if it's PVC, copper, steel, iron, it doesn't matter. It is within the product class of pipe. Now, what is this pipe used for? Is it used for research and development? Is it going to be resold? Is it used for maintenance? Is it part of an installation? So these input fields that we figure out are going to get mapped to categories, and that's what's going to trigger our tax. So on the supply side, we have product class, usage, and usage class. I am selling to customers. On the procurement side, I'm purchasing from vendors. I have purchase or a class of purchases, usage or a usage class. I'm going to see that there's actually a lot more different types of drivers available on the procurement side than on the supply side. Now, the taxability mapping. So if I expand my tax setup, I see underneath there tax categories, which I'm going to take you on a little tour of. And then I see my taxability mapping. And I also see flexible fields. You can utilize flexible fields to create taxability drivers, but we really don't have time to go into that today. That would be another session. So I have 3 here. So let's say when this customer purchases this item to be used in this way, I want that to be mapped to this particular category. When all the rest of my customers purchase this item, I want it to be mapped to another category. Or maybe any customer purchases this item to be used in this way, it should be mapped to this category. So what are my steps? I have to create drivers to represent what's coming from my financial system. I have to research my categories, and then I need to map the drivers to the categories. So let's go to my demo here. And I want to go to this screen, and hopefully now you will see the version 9 of O Series. So I have it currently set to today's date. Let's look at the supply side first. So on the supply side, I've created 2 taxpayers. I had some others in here as I was developing this class. But the company that I'm going to use for this demonstration is the Creative Coin and Medallion Company. They manufacture coins and medallions out of many different materials for many different customers for many different uses. So the raw materials consist of everything from recycled plastics to precious metals. And this allowed me to really grab some different rates and rules as far as conditional rules. And they sell their products to customers throughout the United States. I'm limiting this to the United States. Now, I also created a company called Number 5, which is code 5. And the reason for that, I just wanted to show you these input fields rather than calling them taxpayer, customer, customer class, and all of the rest. I just wanted to show you them in the number of their priority. So just a quick look at my my customer here from Creative. It's registered in the United States, all of the states, not at the federal level, but at all of the states. And I really didn't do anything else there with that. Okay, now on the supply side, I have customers. So I have a customer 1 for my Creative Coin and Medallion Company. And I also have customer 6 for my taxpayer number 5. And that'll make more sense at the end of this presentation. On the procurement side, I have vendors. So let's just take a look at the vendors. So I have vendor 1 for the Creative Coin and Medallion Company. But we're going to do everything on the supply side, except I am going to take another peek back here with our taxability drivers. So let's take a look at what taxability driver management looks like on the supply side. So I have products, and the 2 products that we're going to look at today are product number 1. Notice that the code is 1, so that's first in the hierarchy for my taxpayer number 5. And then I have created a product called medallions that are for the Creative Coin and Medallion Company. Also, product class. I have product class number 2 for the taxpayer 5, and I have a product class of coins. So there's a lot of different coins and a lot of things that fall underneath coins, where that medallion that I looked at previously, that was pretty specific. And that's the difference between a product and a product class. Now, I also have usage. What am I using these items for? That may affect my taxation. So the code is 3 for taxpayer 5, but for my Creative Coin and Medallion Company, it's going to be accessories, specifically under costumes, masks, and accessories. And then my usage is going to be a more general under costumes. So the other one was a little bit more specific. And I have it as far as code 4 for taxpayer 5. And I also have costumes for my Creative Coin and Medallion Company. So those are my taxability drivers. Now let's take a look at taxability categories. So I'm going to minimize my enterprise and expand the tax setup. And we're going to take a look at our taxability categories. Now there's 3 ways to search for categories. I can expand the category tree, and I could say, I'm going to expand general, and I'm going to expand tangible personal property and goods, and I am interested in coins. So that's one way to search, okay? Another way to search is I am going to look for costumes. And I see here's costumes. Costumes appear under is the subcategory under the subcategory clothing, which is under tangible personal property, which is under general. So that's the second way to search. The third way to search is I know that there's a word in the description of this item that I'm looking for, but I don't know what this item is called, so I'm going to search for it. And I see accessories. Oh, well, there's a code, and that's a commodity code. So let's go down here and see what that means. Harbor and rail post, port services, port utilization, accessories services. Well, that's not what I want. So if I go back up here, I see that there are 17 other mentions of accessories. So I really have to have tried going through the hierarchy and tried naming the categories before I'm actually going to use the description to actually search there. So the taxability category that I want to look for is coins and bullion. So let's go back here to coins. And I want coins and bullion under tangible personal property. There's also a specific commemorative coins and medallions, which I'm sure my company would be interested in making, but currently that's not a product that I am currently making or analyzing. All right, so I have coins and bullion. Let's do an analysis of that category. So I'm going to go to taxability analysis. I need a company. Fortunately, I have a couple of companies. The one that I want to look at is Creative Coin and Medallion Company. My taxability category is coins and bullion. The imposition type, a good place to start in the United States is general sales and use. But if you know more specifically, it's under firearms, or if it's under fees or FCC, I could also search there. And there we go. Now, remember, in the category, I registered my company only in the states of the United States. I did not register my company at the federal level in the United States because currently we do not have indirect taxes at the federal level, but at the state level we do. So I'm going to just expand the United States and take a look at a couple of jurisdictions that are interesting here. All right, so the first one that I have chosen to take a peek at is Alabama. And I have two ways that I could look at Alabama. I could click on the word Alabama, which has the line underneath it, which will tell me about the lower jurisdictions in Alabama. But that's really not what I'm looking for today. I'm just doing my research at the state level. So I'm going to select the checkbox in front of Alabama. I see that the taxability is taxable, and there is a conditional rule. I don't see any non-standard rule. So my automatic rule in Alabama at the state level would be a 4% tax. Now I have a couple of options here. The Alabama Simplified Seller Use option, which may be making our lives easier for some people. So rather than filing and paying tax at the state, county, city, and potentially district level, I am just going to pay at the state level a higher percentage, 8%, and I'm going to rely on the state to divide that up. Another conditional rule that I found interesting, and this was why I picked it, was this metal purity for coins and bullion. So gold, silver, platinum, or palladium items containing less than 0.9 of its purity is taxable and defers to the standard rate, which would take it up to 4%. All right, let's go to another category. So I want to go back to taxability categories. And this time I'm going to type medallions. And I have commemorative coins and medallions. And there they are, commemorative coins and medallions, which is part of, big sales for me, New Orleans during Mardi Gras. The different crews have coins minted, usually out of aluminum. I don't think they would use gold bullion or platinum or anything else, or plastic. And they create a lot of different medallions too that would have their different crews on them. So let's take a look at the taxation, and maybe you could use these medallions as awards in sports ceremonies and other places. So let's look at a couple other states here. So I'm going to go down to Utah. There we go. And I see that it's taxable and there's a conditional rule. All right. So in Utah, the automatic rule would be a 4.85% tax at the state level. But if it's gold, silver, or platinum with a content of at least 80%, it becomes non-taxable. Well, that's interesting. The different states take it in a different direction. And then I want to look at this. Let's go up to South Dakota. I think that was the other one that had something interesting to look at. There we go. So this is me analyzing my product line. I see that the automatic rule for South Dakota is it would be non-taxable. But if it's used as a token, hey, I'll make tokens. It's going to be 4.5% rather than non-taxable. I don't think I can justify South Dakota construction materials bid exception. Yeah, who knows? But I don't think that's going to fit for me. Okay, one thing that I wanted to do here, not at the tokens, but let's see, I think it was in Utah. I wanted to, yeah, let's see. Yeah, that's at line item level. Virginia, that's the state that I was looking for. All right. So this is what triggered. I was with a customer, and a customer asked me a question, and I don't know much. I didn't know much about coins or bullion. Or the question was, in the state of Virginia, not to be taxed at the line item, but to be taxed at the invoice level, which is something that I don't see that often. So the automatic rule would have been 4.3, but the metal purity coins and bullion would have been 4.3. And then this is the one that started my research, was invoice level billing option for coins and bullion. So there's a tiered rate structure starting from 0 to 1,000. It's going to be taxed at 4.3, and going from 1,000 to infinity, it is not going to be taxed at all. And this is going to be, well, that's line item level there too. Let's see this one. Well, there's another way for me to find this. So let's go back to the category, and the one that I was looking for was invoice level. And there we go, invoice level billing option. Whoops, hey, that shouldn't have happened. Sometimes my virtual machine does not behave exactly as I would expect it to. But I can get back in there. I'm not going to lose anything. There we go. And I was looking for invoice level. Invoice level. There we go. So this is under special taxing drivers, under qualifying conditions. Invoice level billing option. So let's take a look at this. Taxability analysis, my company, creative coin, and expand the United States. And I think it was Virginia. Yeah, there we go, Virginia, let's see. There we go. So invoice level billing option. All right, now we have done some research on Utah, South Dakota, Virginia, and Alabama on some of my different products. Let's actually map some of these products to categories now that we have. So let's go down to Taxability Mapping. And I already have some things mapped here. I have coins and medallions mapped, and commemorative coins and medallions, and costumes. So let's map, let's see one that I don't have here. Let's map the usage class of costume. All right, so we're going to add a mapping. I'm going to just use today's date. I don't have an end date, so this is going to just continue. I don't have a special note. So my entity that I'm going to look at first here is, let's do usage class first. So I'm going to go to usage class and search. So these are all the usage classes that were created. And the usage class that I want is costume. So there's my driver that's been selected. Now I need to find an appropriate taxability category to map that to. So the easiest way is for me to just go costumes. And I see under tangible, there is costumes. All right. I'm going to select that. Now I have the ability with these costumes, if I don't do anything at this point, all of the automatic rules would trigger. For instance, in Alabama, I would get a 4.4%. But if these are costume masks, also 4%, but for a different category. And I could also use the simplified seller use. Let's see what's happening down in New Orleans. Lots of costumes there for Mardi Gras. Louisiana. Where am I going? Louisiana. There we are. So the automatic rule would be 4.45%. Tangible personal property for lease or rent. Well, could be renting these. That's a possibility, which would make it tax-free. Probably not for the oil field. I'm not going to be renting costumes for the oil field. Could be a remote dealer's option, 8.45. Purchased exclusively outside of the state, tangible personal property, which would make it tax-free. And another oil field rule. All right. I am good with, I'm just going to go back to my automatic rule and save. So I do have a mapping there. Now let's map one of the other, let's map coins. All right, so let's add a new one. And the entity that I'm looking for is a product. I think it was a product class was coins, because the medallions was my product. So let's search. There we go, coins and bullions, not map. Let's add that one. So I have coins and bullions. So I'm going to select that. And my taxability driver is going to be, I'm going to look for coins. There we go, coins and bullion. And there we go, coins and bullion. Let's select it. And now I have a mapping of a driver to a category. Let's take a look at the analysis here. Expand. And some of the states that we saw some different things in. I remember, I think Virginia. let's see what Virginia's got a conditional rule. Let's see what theirs is. So that's where I had my taxability is 4.3, but the metal purity for coins and bullion is 4.3. And then I also have this option of invoice level billing option. Now here I go. There's two conditional rules that could potentially be the result that I want. So what I have to do is I have to sensitize my data. There's a couple of different ways to do that. I could say, well, I already have this driver for coins. Maybe I'll create a flexible field for invoice level billing and map regular coins to metal purity, and then I'll map the coins plus the flexible field here. Or I could create a new driver that's coins invoice level and map it to here. So one way or the other, that information, when it's passed from the financial system, I need that driver to be mapped to the correct category to trigger this result. So let's take a look. We also had some action up there in Utah. So let's see what was going on in Utah. Automatic roll. So that must have been for a different category. And how about South Dakota? And that's just an automatic roll. So for coins, I'm only going to grab that one automatic roll. So let's save that. Now let's go back to the categories and take a look at something here. So the qualifying conditions that are going to be the conditional rules are going to be contained in the qualifying conditions here. For instance, there's some special customer drivers. First Nation status, Indian, or fiscal terminal. So any of these, the one that we found was invoice level. So that's going to be your qualifying conditions. Manufacturing is usually used on the procurement side. You're purchasing items that are being consumed in the manufacturing process or part of the manufacturing process, but you could also be selling products for the manufacturing process. So you could potentially be using manufacturing. Let's take another look there. So are these items used in direct production? Are they consumed in the process, like drill bits or saw blades or chemicals used in the manufacturing process? General. These are usually going to be things that I'm selling to customers or services that I'm providing to customers. So what am I selling? Marketing, promotional materials, baby infant supplies, clothing, coins, bullion, computer software. And then underneath each of these, I see I have coins, bullion, and then underneath that, I have precious metal bullion, monetized bullion, commemorative coins, and medallions. So I had set up that coins was going to be a class of product, and the commemorative coins and medallions was going to be more specifically a product. Okay, so I am going to have time to do my my test here. I wanted to show you that. So once again, on the go watch where you're clicking. On the supply side, kind of limited taxability drivers, product class, usage and usage class. And then if I had created flexible fields to create drivers off of, it would be beneath there. On the procurement side, purchase class, usage class. And then we get into some very specific things. Cost center, department codes, general ledger, material code, project number, vendor SKU. All right, so let's take a look at a transaction here. So I'm going to go to Tools and the Transaction Tester and a single transaction. And I want to call up a transaction that I already set up. So I'm going to load from file, and why are my batches not there? Oh, because I'm on the procurement side. There we go. We can figure this out. Okay, supply side. So the test that I set up was on the supply side. All right, one more time. So I'm in the transaction tester. I'm going to load from file. And I have a batch that I created called Exchange 2020. And this test, taxpayer 5 test. And this was the reason I gave numbers to my taxpayer, my customer class, my product class, my usage, and my usage class, is I wanted you to see where they appeared in the transaction and where the priority was. So this event is going to be an invoice. It's going to be on today's date. It's a sale. The taxpayer code is number 5. So it's company number 5. My customer code is number 6. My customer class is number 7. And if I go down here, I see I have 3 line items. Let's look at, and these 3 line items are identical, except for I map these items to different products so that I could trigger the different conditional rules for Utah, San Diego, not San Diego, South Dakota, and Virginia. So my product is number 1. My product class is number 2. My usage is 3. My usage class is 4. I just put in an extended price of $100 on each of these. All right, so let's go back to my transaction. I am going to look at the XML code. This is a invoice request pre-transaction. Okay, so the transaction type is going to be a sale. It's on today's date. Who is the seller? The seller is company code 5. Who is my customer? Well, there's a class code of 7, but if you have a class code passed and a customer code passed, the customer code is going to take precedence. So even though I passed the 7, it's going to use the 6 because the customer is a member of that class, but it does have a special record. So line item 1, there's usage 3 and usage class 4. And here's my next customer, product class 2, line item 2, usage class, and there's my tax area IDs. So I just did the transactions at the state level, 47, 45, and 42. And here's the close of my invoice request down here and my 3 line items. So let's actually calculate, and then we will take a look at our results. Okay, so it was Virginia, Utah, and South Dakota, 1 transaction for each line item. Each of them was for $100. Let's expand, take a closer look here. So in the state of Virginia, the full $100 was taxable at a rate of 4.3. And here was my rule ID, 510815. I click on that. I see this rule ID was created by Vertex. Taxes to be charged to the buyer. Is there a qualifying condition? No conditional rule there. All right. So let's go back to our transaction. Our second one was Utah. The rate was 4.85. There's my rule ID and my tax amount. And the tax is going to be charged on all three of these line items to the buyer. Let's take a quick look at the XML before I run out of time here. All right, so let's look at the XML. So this is the invoice response. So a transaction was sent from the ERP to the O series, and O series made these following calculations. It was on today's date. It was a sale type. The company was number 5. The customer code is 6. Is business indicator equals true is 6. So it's not using the class there. I have my amounts, my totals, my total with tax, my total tax, and then I have my line items begin. So for line item 1, my usage class, my tax area ID, my product class, my extended price, and then my results. So first one, Virginia, and $100. And there's my second line item. Let's scroll down here real quick. And this one was for Utah. And my third one was South Dakota. So the reason that I broke it down to just these numbers rather than using the company name that I created, I wanted for you to just see the priority. The priority is number 1 is the product, okay? It isn't until number 5 that we get to the company. And number 6 is the customer, and number 7 is the customer class as we work our way through that list. So let me finish up my slides, and we may have a quick minute for a question here. There we go. And all right. So is my slide deck back up now? Are we seeing the slide deck? You get some positive response from somebody there? Okay, great. All right, so what did we do? We looked at taxability drivers. We needed a company. We didn't really need a customer, but I showed you a customer because you could say that this product, I don't know who the customer is, but I'm selling this product. What's the taxability of that? The taxability driver by itself isn't going to do anything. It needs to be mapped to a category. I need to analyze that category to make sure I'm actually going to get the correct results. And then once I'm sure that I'm actually going to map the driver to the category. All right. We've only got 7 minutes here. What's the crowd control, Jess? I said that there wasn't going to be any questions. So why don't you start up at the top of the list and throw me a question or two, and let's see if I can answer before we get out of here. Let me just give you my contact information. If you have a tough technical question, call support. They're going to be way better. If you throw me something really hard, I'm just going to call support or call a subject matter expert. If you want to talk about training, there's a lot of different options for O-Series training on the supply side, the procurement side, leasing, value-added tax for the European Union. We're working on Brazil. So there's a lot of different training available, and we're willing to customize it for you. So, you out there, Jess? You want to throw one to me?
Sure. All right, here's the first one. Does Vertex have documentation illustrating the tax driver hierarchy?
Yes. So 2 places that you could go see that. You could just go up. Well, I'm showing the slides now. So in the top right-hand corner, there is a question mark. If you click on the question mark, you could find information on the hierarchy there in the help. Also, the user guide. I think it's also in the administrator's guide. And of course, you could call our friends over there in support, and they will also go through that with you. All right, next.
All right. And everyone keep in mind, I'm kind of just picking and choosing here, but as I mentioned, all of these will be answered via email if we don't get to them. So the next question is, what is the difference between commodity code and taxability driver?
Oh, excellent. That's an excellent question, and something I would have addressed if we had more time. So originally, you had to create taxability drivers and map them to categories. So our first level of commodity codes, which was a few years back, were the United Nations commodity codes, which I believe there's about 40,000 commodity codes. So if your customer or even within your company, you decide to go with commodity codes, the commodity code is there are already commodity codes mapped to all of our existing categories. Now, there are more commodity codes than we have categories because our customers go through the categories and they see that they're missing something or they need a subcategory, and they request it, and we add categories. So we're always adding categories. But we're not going to sit down and stop everything and put all 40,000 commodity codes, because a lot of them end up getting mapped back to the same. Like there's a lot of commodity codes that are just for different types of clothing. And as far as the taxation goes, it just goes to everyday clothing. So there's UN commodity codes. The second level, which was in version 8, Brazilian commodity codes, unique to Brazil, but there are some other South American countries that do utilize the Brazilian commodity codes. With version 9, we began introducing the Indian commodity codes, and India, the country, not India, the native people in America. So we're building towards that. There are some Indian commodity codes within the system, and that's something that we're working for. So the advantage of using a commodity code is you don't have to map it to the category. It's already mapped for you. All right. Squeeze another one in there.
All right. Does taxability depend on order of the lines at all?
Does the taxability depend on the lines? Well, I'm going to say no, with the exception of when I ran my little test, I showed you that I passed a customer class and a customer code. There may be a reason you're doing that. There may not be a reason for it. But if you pass both of those, it's going to make the calculation on the customer. So same with product and product class. It's going to, the product is going to take the priority. But if you took a bunch of line items and you changed the order of the line items or the jurisdictions, I can't think of a way for you to actually change your results. Now, if you started playing around with tax assist rules, yes. But just natively setting up drivers, mapping to categories, and then passing those drivers in a transaction, I would say no. Okay, squeeze another one in there. Got 2 minutes left.
Okay, is this setup required for every customer/vendor or just those with exceptions?
Good. Okay, good question. So if I don't create drivers, and I just set up my company and I say I'm registered in all of the states in the United States, but not the federal level, O-Series is going to calculate everything, everyone, everywhere at the standard rates and rules. So when do I have to start setting up drivers? Well, some of the products that I sell are taxed differently than other products. If all of your products are taxed at the standard rates, I've yet to see that company, but if they were, you wouldn't have to. Same with your customers. If none of your customers have exemption certificates, or there's nothing special about the way they sell to you, the way that you sell to them, you don't need a customer. I mean, just making a calculation on a product that was sold. And if all your products are tangible personal property, they're all the same. But you'd be kind of hard pressed to walk into a store and say, oh, well, it's a grocery store. They're selling food, and some of the food's for takeout, some of it's for consumption on site, and they're selling T-shirts and hats, and they got fruit and vegetables, and they got coffee, and all of these different things that are potentially taxed different ways. So, but is it necessary? No. What is necessary? You have to have at least one company, and in O Series, you need to register the jurisdictions that you want to calculate on. I think that's it. Are we out of time now?